Hello and welcome to episode 67 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. We have a lot of fun for you on the show today. Sarah Says will be here in just a few seconds to give us the 411 on the return of Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party at Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World and the continuation of Celebrate Soulfully at Disneyland. After that, our good friend Marisa from Chicago will join us to talk about what is right and what is wrong with Disney's Hollywood studios. It should be an interesting conversation. Before we get started, I'm leaving for my 620-mile pilgrimage on the Ireland Way to raise money and awareness for the fight against domestic violence in less than a month. The flights are booked, some of the hotel rooms are booked, and all of the gear has been purchased. I was hoping to have all of the information to donate to the domestic violence charity ready for this episode, but we're trying our hardest to get all of our ducks in a row. This is not just a fundraiser for me, as I will have an actual hand in the program, and I don't want to rush anything out too early. With that being said, I do know that I will need to have this information to you by next week's episode. Battling domestic violence is a major cause in my life. I just want to make sure I'm doing this properly. Now, let's turn things over to Sarah Says with the information you need about the return of one of the most popular events at Walt Disney World.
Thanks, Rick. On Wednesday, May 18th, that is when you will get your chance to purchase tickets to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party 2022 at Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World. Guests at certain Walt Disney World resorts can purchase advance tickets now. The party will be returning officially for the first time since 2019. After there was no after-hours celebration in honor of Halloween in 2020, and Boo Bash served as a temporary placeholder last year. Returning from past years will be the Headless Horseman and the Boo to You Parade, special Halloween-themed meet and greets scattered throughout Magic Kingdom, the Sanderson sisters hosting the Villain Spelltacular show in front of Cinderella Castle, the nighttime show Not So Spooky Spectacular hosted by Jack Skellington, trick-or-treating at various locations in the park, and seasonal overlays to Space Mountain, Mad Tea Party, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor. New for the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World, exclusive step-in photo opportunities, and a commemorative 50th anniversary celebratory print. Another popular aspect of the party is that Magic Kingdom relaxes the rules on the types of costumes adults can wear into the parks. Of course, there are still some restrictions, but adults can go a little beyond the normal Disney bounds while creating costumes of some of their favorite characters. Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party will take place from 7 p.m. to midnight on 37 different nights at Magic Kingdom after the park has closed to regular day guests. The first party will take place on August 12th, and the celebrations run through Halloween night on October 31st. Tickets range from $109 to $199, and there are discounts for Walt Disney World annual pass holders and Disney Vacation Club members on select nights. To hear about last year's after-hours Boo Bash at Magic Kingdom, you can go back and listen to episode 31 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty from September 2nd. On that particular show, Rick is joined by our friend Jillian as the two discuss their adventures through the limited capacity event. Heading over to Disneyland, where there will be a lot going on this June to continue Celebrate Soulfully. Announced in February, Celebrate Soulfully is taking place in Disney parks as a way to honor Black culture and heritage. From June 1st through the 4th of July, Disney's California Adventure will have musical performers from traditionally Black genres ranging from doo-wop to Motown. This will include the a cappella vocal group Philly Phonics performing songs from the 1920s through the current day. At night, you can head to Hollywood Backlot for a block party with live music 7 days per week. In downtown Disney, guests will get the chance to see the Soul of Jazz, an American Adventure, which is an exhibit that has been showing at the American Adventure in Epcot at Walt Disney World. With a focus on the Pixar movie Soul, the exhibit is focused on showing jazz as a uniquely Black and uniquely American art form. Downtown Disney will also be featuring nightly performers this summer, including many jazz, R&B, funk, Motown, and doo-wop groups. The biggest news to come out of Disneyland's Celebrate Soulfully announcement would have to be the new Lion King show starting at Fantasyland Theater on May 28th. Tale of the Lion King is said to be an original story theater adaptation of The Lion King. The dialogue, dancing, percussion, songs, and costumes all pay tribute to the cultural roots of the story. The Troubadour Tavern will also have some menu items themed to the new show starting on May 28th. I'm Sarah Says, and now I'm going to turn things back over to Rick.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's keep the show rolling by bringing on Marisa from Chicago to talk about the third park to open at Walt Disney World. Thanks for joining us, Marisa.
Always great to be here.
So today we have an interesting topic, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of conversation, ample conversation, if you will, and that is what's right and what's wrong at Disney's Hollywood Studios. I once saw Hollywood Studios described as the worst park with the best rides, and I think that we might agree with that on some areas, but there's going to be other areas where I do think Hollywood Studios is a good theme park and not just a holder of good rides. So we always try to do this where we start with the negative first so we can end strong and on a positive note. So Marisa, why don't you list one thing that is wrong with Hollywood Studios?
So right now, one of the big things for me that I think is a big detractor for Hollywood Studios is that the streetmosphere performers are no more. So all of that wonderful streetmosphere you'd get, the old-time Hollywood characters, all of that charm is just gone. And I think that takes a lot of charm out of the park itself.
And there has been some limited return of some of that stuff, but overall, it is not nearly what it used to be. You used to go into Hollywood Studios and there would be the citizens of Hollywood just running up and down Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard, and it really gave it that old Hollywood feel. Like Michael Eisner said, the Hollywood that never was and always will be. And yeah, it definitely is missing that. I think that's what makes it almost feel like an empty park sometimes.
Definitely. It just doesn't have as much, pardon the pun, but character as it used to without them, walking around in those interactions. It takes something out of it, a little bit of the soul, to be a bit dramatic there.
Now I'm going to go to something I think is wrong with Disney's Hollywood Studios, and this is a great land. The rides are good. The theming is okay, I guess. I think people maybe overstep the theming a little bit. But what is wrong with Toy Story Land is it is so hot and they don't have any adequate shade. 2 of the rides have outdoor queues. You might even be outdoors for a little bit for Toy Story Mania. You're outside. It is so hot in this land with no covering. You might have to wait 2.5 hours to ride Slinky Dog Dash, and you're standing in basically a sauna.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I actually had no shade as a comment for the whole park, but specifically in Toy Story Land, it's brutal. I think that's probably like 10 degrees hotter than just like Galaxy's Edge right down the road. For some reason, standing there, it's just like you feel yourself baking.
And Galaxy's Edge is not a cool land. It's not a land with a lot of shade either. So that is a problem as well at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. But it's a tenfold problem at Toy Story Land. It is the biggest misstep Imagineering has made in a long, long time.
Absolutely. I don't know what was going through everyone's heads because obviously, this gets designed, people approve it. It goes through several steps of approval. But no one thought, hey, this area of the park needs some shade, especially because it attracts so many families with young children. It just blows my mind that no one thought about that.
So let's continue and we're going to stay negative right now, but don't worry, we will get to the positive. And there is a lot of positive, so don't think we're being overly critical. Do you have something else that is wrong with Hollywood Studios?
Oh, yes. And there are a lot of positive too. But I think that the way it's laid out, just the footpaths and everything, it leads to a lot of choke points, more than I think you get in a lot of the other parks. So there are so many times when you're walking through Hollywood Studios in various areas of the park, and you end up in this massive crowd of people trying to get into Galaxy's Edge from Toy Story Land or trying to get down Sunset Boulevard. It's not that crowded where you really should be shoulder to shoulder with people, but it's just the way the park is laid out, that you naturally get more choke points. And I think that's something that's frustrating for park goers, as you're trying to navigate and get through different spaces. I think that can be irritating.
I didn't think of putting that into words. It wasn't something that I thought of when I was trying to list things, but the second you said it, what immediately popped into my mind is that area in front of Star Tours where it makes a triangle with a bathroom and Backlot Express, the quick service location. That triangle gets so crowded, and now the Pixar character cavalcade ends there. So sometimes they just stop what's already a crowded area so that they can have the cavalcade go through there. You're right, there are some really bad bottleneck areas in Hollywood Studios. To piggyback on that, it's not the easiest park to maneuver for a number of reasons, but if you're back by Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, which for all intents and purposes is an e-ticket attraction, and you're trying to get to another e-ticket attraction in Tower of Terror, there's no direct way to do that. You're in completely different ends of the park, and it's not like if you're in Magic Kingdom and you try to go from Big Thunder Mountain Railroad to Space Mountain, and you just have to walk through the middle of the park. You definitely have to curl around a lot and do a lot of extra walking. You are not going as the bird flies.
Yeah, that's a great point, because that is something that you get so used to, the kind of hub and spoke model of the other parks. And then Hollywood Studios just kind of tosses that out the window in a very interesting way, where they're like, no, if you want to get from point A to point B, be prepared to, do all these different routes and go all these different ways, and you'll get there eventually, but it adds 10,000 steps. And those steps count in a Disney trip. I mean, you're already walking, upwards of 7 miles a day.
And Hollywood Studios is not a big theme park, but it can still take you a long time to walk around it. It can take you a long time to walk around Animal Kingdom because they do a similar thing, but at least at Animal Kingdom, they're sending you around somewhere else so you see something else. If you're leaving Toy Story Land to go to Tower of Terror, there are points where you're literally just walking and seeing the backs of buildings. There's not even great theming there. So I wish there were a few more direct routes to get around this theme park. Good answer there, Marisa. That was definitely a good observation. Thanks. One of the things that I think is wrong with Disney's Hollywood Studios is the merchandise. The merchandise locations, for the most part, obviously the marketplace on Batuu and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Doc Ondar's Den of Antiquities, those are very well-themed, awesome locations to buy merchandise. But the rest of the merchandise in this park is so bland, it's almost like it would be a store in Disney Springs.
I definitely agree with that. That's a great point, especially on Sunset Boulevard. All those little shops right next to each other. Walking through there, it really doesn't feel like anything much is Hollywood Studios themed. There are little themes, mini baby themes, but it really does feel like you could be walking through Disney Springs and it would have the same exact feel to it. When you're walking through, when you're on Main Street and you're walking through those shops, yes, you're all indoors, but the inside of the shops are still themed where you feel like you're in Magic Kingdom. And I don't think that Hollywood Studios did that for some reason.
The best example of what I'm trying to say here, I think, is the Pixar Store, which is on Sunset Boulevard, because it has a whole bunch of Pixar stuff, but it's plushies from Inside Out, and it's t-shirts with Woody and Bo Peep on them, or Buzz Lightyear on them. There's nothing unique. There's so much really unique Pixar stuff that they could do, still have a Pixar store, but sell artwork from the Pixar movies or something that you can't find everywhere. It's just, well, I guess we'll theme this store to Pixar and we'll sell the same stuff as we sell in every other store. It's just we'll only sell the Pixar stuff here.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating when you think about that. Now that I'm really thinking about that, it's I wish they would have done a little bit more exclusive items there.
Even Tatooine Traders, which is the store as you're getting off Star Tours. It's just regular Star Wars stuff that you can find at Target. There are a couple signed items, but besides that, it's nothing special. There's a Star Wars store right there on Hollywood Boulevard, and it's just, maybe it's a little more unique than at Tatooine Traders, but Star Wars merch, people want so much of it, you should be able to give a lot of unique stuff, and I just don't think they do it. But what else do you have for what's wrong? And we're going to start to get to the positives then soon.
Okay. So one thing that I feel they can improve on, which this is a little bit more minor, but I feel like they don't have as many savory snack options. Like when I look through the parks, I tend to go savory over sweet because sometimes the sweets can be too sweet. And when, I look at lists of best snacks for Hollywood Studios, the Jack Jack cookie comes up, the Wookiee cookie comes up, the carrot cake cookie comes up. And yes, those are all good, but recently when I've been there, I feel like my snack options are a pretzel if I want something savory. And sometimes I want something a little more exciting than a pretzel that I can get everywhere on Disney property.
And I think you were incredibly generous by saying that the Jack Jack Cookie Num Num is good, because I think it is way too sweet. I always look at it and think, boy, that looks good. And then I get it and I bite into it, and it's sweet to the point that it's almost gross.
I've always avoided it for that reason, because I look at it and I'm like, okay, I can take 2 bites of this thing before I get sick of it. I don't think it's worth it. So it's good to know that I made the right call on that. I'll continue staying away.
The only other thing I'm going to add for what's wrong with Disney's Hollywood Studios, and it's a problem all over Walt Disney World, but I think it's Hollywood Studios more than any other park there, and that is wait times. There are only 9 rides at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and because of that, they're all basically e-ticket attractions except for Alien Swirling Saucers and Star Tours. So they always have lines that are like an hour and a half. Now you throw in Lightning Lane and Genie Plus, and that's extending it even more. We all know about all of the problems with Rise of the Resistance and how long we've had to do boarding groups, and then it goes to individual Lightning Lane purchases. There aren't enough rides at Hollywood Studios to handle the crowds there. And they've been bringing back shows, and they've been trying to find ways to spread out the crowds, but the main draw at Hollywood Studios is the rides, and until they have some really good theming, like Marisa said, bring back the citizens of Hollywood. Try to have more characters meeting around the park. Try to do something to spread people out in this theme park.
Yeah, no, that's like 100% one of the biggest reasons that my personal Hollywood Studios touring strategy is like get in and do a couple rides and then get out, because otherwise you're going to be spending most of your day just waiting in lines. I'm not as interested in some of the shows. I'm not interested in Disney Junior things that are there that could potentially eat time. I want to go ride Slinky or Toy Story or Rise of the Resistance. And those wait times add up fast. You could easily spend your whole day there and get 3 rides done, especially if you miss the, really early morning when, some people haven't gotten out of bed yet. If you miss that like very early rope drop crowd, I mean, you could end up in 3-hour lines for everything, which is very frustrating.
And now as we move on to the positives, to the many, many things that are right about Hollywood Studios, I'm going to piggyback on what I just said, because the best thing about Hollywood Studios in my mind is how easy it is to park hop specifically to Epcot. I almost treat my Hollywood Studios day as a Hollywood Studios / Epcot day. I always plan to go over to Epcot, see whatever the festival is that time, or maybe just ride a couple rides that have short wait times, because Epcot almost has the exact opposite problem, where it is a great park and it doesn't have that many great rides, but it has things like Living with the Land, The Seas with Nemo and Friends, Spaceship Earth. These routinely have lines less than 20 minutes, and you can get there relatively quickly. You can take the Skyliner, the Friendship boats, or if you're feeling adventurous, you can even walk. Because it's so close to Epcot, I think that really adds a lot of value to a Hollywood Studios day if you have a park hopper.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And that's like such a great plus of those parks locations is being able to go back and forth. And if you wanted to, if you do have a park hopper, you could even, spend your morning in Hollywood Studios, hop over to Epcot for, the main afternoon portion. And then as crowds start to die down, head back over to Hollywood and get in the line before the park closes and maybe get a shorter wait time on something like Slinky or Rise of the Resistance that's had a long line all day long. And that's such a huge perk that I think a lot of people don't think about. I didn't, that's for sure.
So what do you have that is right with Disney's Hollywood Studios?
Well, I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention Rise of the Resistance, because that is such an incredible ride. No matter how many times you ride it, it still continues to be impressive. I mean, it always has a long line, but it's also worth the line. If you're going to stand in a long line for one ride, that's the one to consider it for. It's just a marvel of an attraction.
Especially because it's a long attraction. You're on it for a good 20 minutes almost. So if you do wait a long time, it's not like Peter Pan over at Magic Kingdom where you wait an hour and a half and you're on the ride for 2.5 minutes. If you wait a long time for Rise of the Resistance, you are getting your money's worth, if you will, by getting a full fleshed out attraction. And this ride is just so next level. I was thinking the other day, we were at Epcot and I hadn't been to Hollywood Studios in a while. And I was like, do you want to hop over to Hollywood Studios? I haven't been there. And I just remember when this ride opened, how much I had to be at Hollywood Studios because every time a friend came to town, every time somebody was here, they wanted to go to Hollywood Studios and ride Rise of the Resistance, and they wanted to go with somebody who'd done it before because it was always complicated to try to figure out how to do it. So it really changed the entire dynamic of the park when they opened this ride. I've never seen a ride make that big of a change to a theme park before. Even Velocicoaster didn't have this much of an effect on Islands of Adventure over at Universal as Rise of the Resistance had at Hollywood Studios. So I'm going to move to another thing that is right with Hollywood Studios, and this is a little different than my last answer, but it's kind of related as well. Hollywood Studios and Epcot are not only easy to go back and forth to the two parks, but they are both the only two parks that are easy to get to from either the resorts or from off-property. When you park at Hollywood Studios, you have a pretty short walk to get in the door. When you park at Epcot, you have a pretty short walk to get in the door. When you take the bus, you're basically right there. When you get off the Skyliner, you're basically right there. When you talk about Animal Kingdom and the buses let you off a little far away from the entrance, but the parking lot seems like forever away from the entrance. And I'm not even going to get started on Magic Kingdom when it comes to that with the TTC and the buses and Uber drop-offs and all of that stuff. Hollywood Studios is incredibly easy to get there no matter where you're starting your day.
Yeah, that's a good point. As someone who has stayed in Skyliner resorts lately, the ease of that is just incredible. Not having to worry about a bus, just being able to hop on the Skyliner, take a little ride. It's very pleasant. And then you get off at Hollywood Studios and you're right there. You're right by the entrance. That's so nice. And I don't have to worry about the parking lots because I do come from out of town and I stay on property and I take the Disney transportation. But for someone like you who is driving, I would imagine that having a park that's easier to get to just makes it more of an incentive to actually visit in the first place.
And now that I live here, I drive here a lot. But even when I would vacation earlier in my life, I only stayed on property one time as a vacationer. and we still stayed off property. So we were still driving into the theme parks, even as vacationers. And the TTC at the Magic Kingdom is such a pain. And Hollywood Studios is just so well organized, and it makes it a lot easier to get into the park. And that's the start of your day and the end of your day. You want the start and the end of your day to be good, so you have those good memories, because if one of those is messed up, it's going to either start you off or end you off on the wrong foot, and you don't want that. What else do you have that is right with Disney's Hollywood Studios?
All right, so this one is a little odd, but bear with me. I think that this park at dusk is just gorgeous. When the sun is setting and the lights start to come on, it is a beautiful park, and I think that's like when it really shines at the end of the day. While I'm not the biggest fan of Hollywood Studios, in complete honesty, I do love it in the evening. There's just something so cool about being in the park at night, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about that park in the evening, but it's beautiful.
And I think when we talk about some of the things that are wrong with Hollywood Studios, it actually detracted from how beautiful it is at dusk and at night, because people had to get there so early to get boarding groups for Rise of the Resistance for a while. Now that there aren't boarding groups for Rise of the Resistance anymore, they have to get up really early, get into the park, and get in line to try to get the shortest wait possible for that ride. And with that, people aren't here anymore at night. Either they finally get to ride everything they wanted to and they're exhausted and they go back to the hotel at 5, or they do a half day at Hollywood Studios, they run around and ride rides in the morning, and then they head over to Epcot to just chill out and walk around World Showcase and have some drinks and have some food. But you're actually missing the best time at Hollywood Studios if you're doing your trip that way. If you want to talk about how beautiful Hollywood Studios is at night, you have to go no further than Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. People talk about Pandora, the world of Avatar, at Disney's Animal Kingdom and how beautiful it is at night. And yes, it is beautiful at night. Galaxy's Edge trumps it, in my opinion. It is so gorgeous at night, and it is a theme park land that is built to be viewed at night. And Toy Story Land, with all the holiday lights that are hanging throughout the land, that is a land that is built to be experienced at night. Not just because it's so beautiful, but also because the sun isn't beating 10 feet away from your head. Somehow, what ended up happening was they turned this into a park that people only visit during the day, even though it is so much better at night. And I think that they definitely missed an opportunity, and your observation was really, really good here.
Thanks. I do have an idea of what they could do to make people stick around for night. Bring back Fantasmic.
I knew exactly where you were going with that one. I'm not sure we're getting it anytime soon, but that would definitely be a good idea. One thing that I have that is right with Disney's Hollywood Studios, I think, is going to be controversial. I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with me on this one, but I'm going to say it, and I think I have the evidence to support my claim. Disney's Hollywood Studios is a great food park. What Marisa said about the treats being too sweet is absolutely valid. I am talking about restaurants here. Disney's Hollywood Studios does not have the reputation for being a good food park, but if you look at it, it has Hollywood Brown Derby. We've talked about Hollywood Brown Derby a number of times. It is a great signature dining restaurant. If you have the opportunity, you have to take advantage of it. The quick service in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, you have Docking Bay 7, which has some really good options, and you have Ronto Roasters with the infamous Ronto wrap. Those are some good, quick things to just pick up and keep moving through the park. You have the Italian place, Mama Melrose. Almost everybody in your family can at least get something that they're going to kind of like at Mama Melrose, While it may not be fine dining and it might not knock your socks off or anything, Mama Melrose is going to keep everybody happy. I'm not a huge fan of Hollywood and Vine. I don't think the food's all that great, but it's a character dining experience, and you don't do character dining because the food is going to be exceptional. You do it because the character interactions are going to be exceptional. 50s Primetime Cafe sort of has that comfort food, maybe going back to what you might have had. You know, your grandmother might have made it for you. It has the milkshakes. They're showing old-time TV shows on the TVs in there. And then I'm going to let you take this one from me, Marisa, because I know that you love Sci-Fi Dine-In.
I had that on my list. I'm sure that surprises you. But Sci-Fi Dine-In, it feels like you're in an old drive-in movie theater, and they're playing these like sci-fi movies on the screen, little clips. There are cars you can actually sit in as tables. There are little tables in the back that are still themed to be like you're outside at a little drive-in theater. The food is actually very good. I have to say, I was very impressed with it. You know, it's standard. You get burgers and things like that, but it's very good. And one thing that's a major plus for me is they actually do have a vegan milkshake, which is really exciting because you can get other milkshakes on the menu. And this is one thing that they offer that 50s Primetime doesn't have on their menu. So that's a really nice plus.
Just asking, is it almond milk? Is that how they do it?
It's coconut milk. And then it's gluten-free as well, I believe.
That's a really good option and a really good tip, Marisa. I know everybody loves Sci-Fi Dine-In. There are a couple other locations that are actually kind of sneaky good. ABC Commissary for quick service has some great options. Backlot Express maybe isn't the greatest, but I've never had a bad meal there. Everybody jokes about Pizza Rizzo and it being bad pizza, but sometimes that's what your kid wants, is just something that they can call pizza and you can stick in front of their face. Woody's Lunchbox always has some unique items. Maybe they're not anything special or gourmet, but they try to give you some takes on the usual theme park food that tastes a little better than your normal theme park food. Down on Sunset Boulevard, there are a couple different quick service locations that are all in like a food court. They have some really good options down there, but a really underappreciated gem at Hollywood Studios. Not just if you're a drinker, because I'm not a drinker, but the Baseline Tap House is such a great place to sit down, take a load off your feet, enjoy a big old pretzel. Not a Mickey pretzel that's little and costs you like $8. No, I'm talking a huge pretzel with dipping sauces. They have charcuterie boards. They have specialty sodas. This is a great place to relax. If you want to know the tips that the annual pass holders, the places that the people who go all the time and know what's really quality and what isn't, this is what's really quality. This is one of those places where people will go just to experience Baseline Tap House, and then they'll go head somewhere else.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about it being a hidden gem of a food park. I think, especially with Epcot right next door, people don't really think about going to Hollywood Studios to eat. And with the resorts being so close as well, I think a lot of people think, okay, we'll head to Hollywood Studios and then we'll leave to go to either one of the resorts or Epcot for our meals. But you really are missing out on some great food at Hollywood Studios if you take that approach.
So what else do you think they're getting right at Hollywood Studios, Marisa?
I think that their background loops for the music are phenomenal.
That is such a good
absolutely...
answer. That is such a good answer because I wasn't thinking of it at all, but then the second it came out of your mouth, I was like, she is exactly right. When you're on Hollywood Boulevard or Sunset Boulevard and they're playing those old-time songs, it really puts you in the mindset. Such a good answer.
Thanks. Yeah, they really do a great job of using those old-time instrumentals to place you exactly where they want you to be. And it just makes walking down those stretches of the park so much more atmospheric because you really do have, the sights, the sounds, everything is working towards you. And then, to take it further, when you go to Galaxy's Edge, and then, of course, the music changes and it's Star Wars, but then they also have added in sounds of the planes flying overhead. So you're walking around and all of a sudden it sounds like an X-Wing just flew over you. And the first couple times it happens, you find yourself just reflexively looking up because it does sound so real and it adds so much immersion to the land.
That is such a great answer, and it is one that can only be topped by my final answer for what is right at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and that is the Muppet Section. May Muppets 3D stay at Disney's Hollywood Studios until the end of time. That's all I'm asking. And this whole little area back here, I made a little joke about Pizza Rizzo, but it's fun to sit at Pizza Rizzo. Sometimes if they have a specialty dessert or something like that, I'll pick it up and just sit there and relax for a little bit. It's air conditioned. It gets you out of the heat of Hollywood Studios. Mama Melrose is a fun restaurant, vaguely themed towards the Muppets. And then there are shops with a whole bunch of Muppets stuff in it. There's the Christmas ornament shop. And then Muppets 3D, which is such a fun attraction. The last thing Jim Henson ever worked on in his life. I hope they never mess with it ever again.
So you're going to hate me because I don't know if I've ever done Muppets 3D. I don't know if I've ever done it. It's one of those things that every time I go to Hollywood Studios, I say, this is the time I'm going to do it. And then the park closes and I'm leaving. I know. I'm sorry. I can see your face right now, and Rick's going to just boot me off of this entirely.
I'm just trying to find out on your next trip what day is the day that you have your Hollywood Studios reservation, because I am going to make sure you do this. There's no way you can get out of this. It is such a good attraction. It's fun. It gets you off your feet. It's just nostalgia all over the place. The jokes are funny in kind of a dad joke kind of way, but you know the Muppets. You know what kind of jokes you're getting with the Muppets. It really is, because it has been at Hollywood Studios for so long, one of those things that feels like a last grasp at the original purpose of the park.
I do completely agree. It's crucial to the theme park to keep it.
I just can't believe you've gotten away with not doing this. I know your friends in the community, and I don't know how nobody has dragged you onto this thing. That's insane to me.
Yeah, I don't really know either. I feel like I've escaped a little bit, but it's not for lack of trying. I do want to see it. I do like the Muppets. I do think that's an important area in the park. I live in fear of Star Wars expanding it and taking it away, but there are other things that I end up doing instead. And I need to fix that. I do.
I feel like they could rework the lyrics to Cats in the Cradle to be about you never getting on Muppets 3D. You were always just too busy, and before you know it, it grew up and left home for good. Marisa, despite that revelation at the end, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I look forward to us going to see Muppets Vision together.
For Marisa from Chicago and Sarah Says, I'm Rick Doherty, and this has been episode 67 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Join us again next Thursday when Sarah will be back on the show, and the two of us will take an audio tour of Fantasyland in Disneyland. We'll talk about what is a must-do and what can be skipped on a shorter visit and a whole lot more. Until then, have a great week.